From ancient Egyptian tombs to today's Amish farms, the art of food preservation has evolved over 5,000 years. While the Amish didn't invent these preservation methods, they've mastered techniques first developed by the Egyptians. What's truly fascinating is how two communities, separated by millennia and continents, faced similar challenges in keeping their food fresh without modern conveniences. These resourceful societies prove that sometimes the old ways are the best ways, especially when it comes to stopping your lunch from spoiling. While Egyptians battled desert heat exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Amish farmers face Pennsylvania summers hitting 95 degrees Fahrenheit, both without electricity for refrigeration. The Egyptians needed to store food to survive Nile floods and famines, while Amish families preserved summer harvests for winter. Let's explore how these cultures mastered fermentation, a preservation method that might sound scary. Controlled rot doesn't exactly make your mouth water, but it's actually culinary magic at its finest. The Egyptians were basically the original brewmasters, turning their grain into beer that could last for months. They'd let their barley sit in water until it started bubbling with natural yeasts, creating a drink that was safer than plain water and provided essential nutrients. Not just beer, they were fermenting fish into garum, a sauce that would give modern Asian fish sauce a run for its money, and storing vegetables in specially designed clay pots that created the perfect environment for beneficial bacteria. Fast forward a few thousand years, and you'll find Amish families using remarkably similar techniques. Walk into any Amish kitchen during harvest season, and you'll likely spot massive ceramic crocks bubbling away with sauerkraut. The process hasn't changed much. Shredded cabbage, salt, and thyme do all the heavy lifting. These crocks aren't just kitchen decorations. They're time-tested tools that can keep food safe and nutritious for years. The Amish have expanded on these ancient methods, creating an impressive array of fermented foods. Their dairy fermentation game is particularly strong, from tangy yogurt to aged cheeses that can last up to 25 years when properly waxed. Every Amish community has their own special mother cultures passed down through generations, each adding unique flavors to their fermented foods. One of their most versatile creations is apple cider vinegar, which theoretically can last forever, though good luck keeping it that long in a busy kitchen. It starts as sweet apple cider but transforms into a tangy preserve that's used for everything from pickling vegetables to natural medicine. The timeline for fermented foods varies dramatically. Basic fermented vegetables like sauerkraut or pickles can last 3 to 5 years when stored properly. Wax cheese can survive for decades in the right conditions. Vinegar, the champion of fermented products, has an indefinite shelf life. Archaeologists have found still good vinegar in ancient Egyptian tombs. What's fascinating is how both cultures understood the science of fermentation long before microscopes revealed the beneficial bacteria at work. They knew that salt, temperature, and time were crucial factors, even if they didn't know exactly why. When it comes to dehydration, both the Egyptians and Amish discovered that the sun isn't just for getting awkward tan lines, it's nature's most reliable food preserver. No electricity needed, just plenty of patience and good timing. The Egyptians were masters at sun-drying everything they could get their hands on. Dates, figs, and grapes transformed into sweet, concentrated versions of themselves that could last through multiple seasons. They'd string up Nile perch to dry in the scorching desert air, creating a protein-rich food that could sustain them through lean times. Even their medicines got the dehydration treatment. Herbs and spices were carefully dried and stored for healing purposes. The Amish took this ancient wisdom and gave it a practical Pennsylvania twist. While they don't have the luxury of consistent Egyptian sunshine, they've developed clever solar dehydrators that make the most of every sunny day. These structures look like miniature greenhouses with built-in ventilation systems, creating the perfect environment for drying everything from apple rings to sweet corn. Their herb drying techniques would make any Egyptian herbalist proud. Bundles of medicinal and culinary herbs hang from rafters, slowly releasing their moisture while retaining their essential oils. The Amish have perfected the art of corn drying too, a crucial skill when you're feeding large families through long winters. They've even mastered making apple leather, essentially a colonial-era fruit roll-up that can last for months. But they didn't stop at copying the ancient methods. The Amish have added their own improvements to these time-tested techniques. They've learned to incorporate natural preservatives like honey, or salt at just the right moments in the drying process. Their modified airflow systems account for humid Pennsylvania summers that would have been foreign to Egyptian food preservers. They've also developed storage container innovations that protect dried foods from their biggest enemies, moisture and pests. The success of these dehydration methods varies depending on climate and conditions. In the dry Egyptian climate, foods would dehydrate quickly and thoroughly. The Amish face more challenges with their humid environment, but they've adapted by carefully monitoring temperature and humidity levels, often using simple but effective tools like string and weight hygrometers passed down through generations. What's remarkable is how both cultures recognize that dehydration isn't just about removing water. It's about doing it at the right speed and stopping at just the right moment. Too fast, and you get a tough, unpalatable product. Too slow, and you risk spoilage. Through generations of trial and error, both communities mastered this delicate balance, creating preservation techniques that are still relevant in today's world. When it comes to keeping food fresh, sometimes the best solution is to go underground. And both the Egyptians and Amish figured this out in remarkably similar ways. Think of it as Earth's free refrigeration service, no electricity bill required. The Egyptians built impressive underground storage systems called shuna, essentially the great-grandparents of modern root cellars. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were carefully engineered chambers that maintained steady temperatures year-round. They developed intricate ventilation systems that would make modern architects raise their eyebrows in appreciation. Using clay pots arranged in specific patterns, they created different temperature zones for various foods. Fast forward to today's Amish communities, and you'll find root cellars that would make those ancient Egyptians nod in approval. The basic principles haven't changed much. Dig down where the earth maintains a constant cool temperature, add smart ventilation, and organize foods according to their storage needs. It's like playing Tetris with vegetables, but the stakes are keeping your family fed through winter. The Amish have become experts at managing these underground spaces. Different foods need different conditions. Root vegetables like carrots and potatoes go in the coolest, most humid spots where they can last 2 to 5 years if stored properly. Apples and pears get their own section because they release ethylene gas that can speed up ripening in other foods. They're the party starters of the fruit world. These can last 1 to 2 years when stored correctly. Squash and pumpkins hang out in slightly warmer, drier areas where they can survive for about a year. Nuts and dried fruits get the driest spots where they can last 2 to 3 years without going rancid. The Amish have mastered the art of creating these different zones using simple but effective methods like strategic shelf placement and natural airflow patterns. What's fascinating is how both cultures figured out that underground storage isn't just about temperature. Humidity plays a crucial role too. Too much moisture and you'll grow things you definitely don't want to eat. Too little and your foods will dry out faster than a water balloon in the Sahara. The Amish use traditional methods to monitor humidity, like hanging salt blocks that absorb excess moisture or placing wood shavings to help regulate moisture levels. When it comes to natural preservatives, honey is the undisputed champion. It's literally immortal. Archaeologists have found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs that's still perfectly edible, though maybe save that batch for the museum rather than your morning toast. The Egyptians understood honey's incredible preserving powers, using it for everything from keeping fruits fresh to preserving meat. Yes, meat, though that's one ancient recipe we might want to leave in the history books. They dipped bread in honey to extend its life and mixed honey into medicinal preparations. The pharaohs were so convinced of honey's importance that they used it as currency and buried jars of it in their tombs for the afterlife. Talk about a sweet retirement plan. The Amish have embraced beekeeping with similar enthusiasm, though they're probably not planning on being buried with their honey stores. Their methods blend traditional wisdom with careful observation of natural processes. Each Amish community typically has several beekeepers who maintain hives using methods that would seem familiar to ancient Egyptian apiarists, working with the bees' natural behaviors rather than against them. What makes honey such a superstar preservative comes down to science. Its low moisture content and high sugar concentration create an environment where bacteria and fungi simply can't survive. They basically die of thirst while getting a sugar headache. Honey also produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, making it naturally antibacterial. The pH level of honey typically around 3.4 to 6.1, creates an acidic environment that most spoilage organisms can't tolerate. The Amish have developed their own techniques for using honey's preservative powers. They combine honey with other preservation methods, like drying fruits partially before storing them in honey, creating preserves that can last for years. Their temperature-controlled storage methods keep honey from crystallizing too quickly, though they know that crystallized honey isn't spoiled. Just warm it gently and it's good as new. What's particularly clever is how both cultures figured out that different types of honey have different preservative properties. The Egyptians preferred specific flower honeys for different preservation tasks, while the Amish notice how spring honey behaves differently from fall honey when used for preserving. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about honey preservation is its simplicity. No special equipment needed, no complex techniques to master. Both cultures recognize that sometimes nature provides perfect solutions if we're wise enough to use them. And while we might have fancy modern preservatives now, none can match honey's track record of keeping food safe and delicious for literally thousands of years. Who knew that clay pots would turn out to be ancient Tupperware? Both the Egyptians and Amish mastered the art of using clay vessels to keep food fresh, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. The Egyptians were basically pottery preservation pioneers. They developed sophisticated clay pot sealing methods that would make modern food storage companies jealous. Using combinations of wax and natural resins, they created airtight seals that kept food fresh for incredibly long periods. Their storage vessels weren't just randomly shaped either. Each design had a specific purpose, with features like narrow necks to minimize air exposure or thick walls to maintain steady temperatures. Fast forward to today's Amish communities, and you'll find them using similar principles with a modern twist. While they might use glass jars instead of clay pots for canning, their sealing techniques follow the same basic concepts the Egyptians figured out millennia ago. They've perfected the art of creating airtight seals using modern materials, but the goal remains the same. Keep air and bacteria out while keeping freshness in. Temperature control was crucial for both cultures. The Egyptians stored their sealed vessels in cool, dark places, often partially buried in sand, to maintain consistent temperatures. The Amish use root cellars and cool basement storage areas, achieving the same effect. They've also mastered humidity management. Too much moisture can compromise even the best seals, while too little can cause food to dry out. What's particularly interesting is how both cultures developed ways to monitor fermentation in sealed vessels. The Egyptians used small holes or channels in their seals that could be plugged to release excess pressure from fermentation gases. The Amish use similar techniques with their fermentation crocks, using water-sealed lids that allow gases to escape while keeping air out. It's like a one-way valve system that predates modern technology by centuries. The success rate of these sealing methods is impressive. When done correctly, foods preserved in properly sealed vessels can last for years. The Egyptians managed to preserve food that remained edible for decades, as evidenced by well-preserved foodstuffs found in ancient tombs. The Amish regularly preserve foods that last through multiple winters using techniques that have been proven reliable through generations of trial and error. Both cultures also understood the importance of proper vessel preparation. The Egyptians would carefully clean and dry their pots before use, sometimes even smoking them to create an extra barrier against spoilage. The Amish are equally meticulous about sterilizing their canning jars and ensuring perfect seals. Who would have thought that oil, the stuff we now mostly associate with cooking, was actually one of history's most effective preservatives? Both the Egyptians and Amish mastered the art of using oil to stop time, at least when it comes to food preservation. The Egyptians were particularly clever with their oil preservation methods. They discovered that submerging vegetables in olive oil created an airtight barrier that kept food fresh for months. They'd pack herbs in oil-filled vessels, creating both preserved ingredients and flavored oils. Talk about ancient multitasking. Fish preserved in oil-filled vessels became a staple of their diet, and they even developed special spice-infused preservation oils that added extra layers of protection and flavor. The Amish have taken these ancient principles and adapted them for modern use. Their herb-infused oils aren't just for cooking. They're carefully crafted preservation tools. They submerge fresh herbs in oil to create preserves that last for months while maintaining the herb's flavors, and medicinal properties. Some Amish families even preserve certain types of cheese in oil, a technique that helps prevent mold while developing complex flavors. The success of oil preservation comes down to a simple principle both cultures understood. Oxygen is the enemy of fresh food. By completely submerging food in oil, you create an airtight barrier that prevents oxidation and microbial growth. When stored properly, oils themselves can last 2 to 3 years, while oil-preserved foods typically stay good for 1 to 2 years. The storage container innovations developed by both cultures show remarkable similarities. The Egyptians used specially designed vessels with narrow necks to minimize air exposure during access. The Amish use similar principles with their modern storage containers, often adding innovative sealing mechanisms to maintain the oil barrier. What's particularly impressive is the success rate of these preservation methods. Both cultures have examples of sealed foods lasting 10+ years, though they'd probably recommend eating them a bit sooner than that. They also learned which foods work best with oil preservation. Soft herbs, vegetables, and certain cheeses are champions, while others are better preserved using different methods. Both cultures also develop clear indicators for when oil-preserved foods have gone bad. Changes in color, texture, or the appearance of bubbles are all warning signs they learned to recognize. It's a reminder that successful food preservation isn't just about the initial process. It's about understanding how to monitor and maintain the preserved foods over time. Perhaps most importantly, both the Egyptians and Amish understood that oil preservation requires patience and attention to detail. Every step, from selecting the right oils to ensuring proper storage temperatures, plays a crucial role in success. It's a preservation method that rewards careful observation and respect for the process, values that both cultures held in high regard. The journey from ancient Egyptian preservation techniques to modern Amish practices shows us that effective food storage solutions don't always require modern technology. While these communities may seem worlds apart, their shared challenges led to remarkably similar solutions. From honey's immortal preserving power to the natural refrigeration of root cellars, these methods have stood the test of time. Today's growing interest in sustainable food storage and self-sufficiency makes these ancient techniques more relevant than ever. Whether in the shadow of the pyramids or the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country, the core principles remain the same. Work with nature, respect time-tested methods, and keep things simple.